Are you ready? All right. I'll call this meeting to order. All members are present. Stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Lynn.
Second.
Second by Sunny. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Any visitors, comments, questions from visitors? There are no visitors. Then to the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve or is there anything that people want to pull?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Lynn.
Second.
Second by Jennifer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. That takes us to discussion item A. High school parking.
Brent, Jeremy's not able to make it with us tonight. Okay, so we're just going to give you an update of where we are on the high school parking lot. So as of last week, Friday, they were just about done putting all of the light borings in. Do you know, Brent, where they are in the grading? Are they pretty close on the grading?
Yeah, they'll probably start on the exterior concrete next. Working on lighting now. I had a hit in the front with a volcanic issue, so a fiber got hit. So, was that right? Yep. So, it cost a little bit of, I shouldn't say a little bit, probably a solid day with the electrical install.
But that line has been repaired. Thanks to Brian for his work involved in that, because we did need internet. We did need the internet for Saturday morning's ACT, and that line actually cut that part of it. So CenturyLink was here late Friday night. I came through town around 7 o'clock, 7:30. CenturyLink was working on it, and of course then we have a power outage Friday night with the storm. And so Brian had to come back again Saturday morning early to reset it so we could have ACT testing. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But as far as the parking lot is concerned, things are going pretty well. As you know, then on Monday night, or I'm sorry, this Wednesday night, we will be at the city requesting the variance.
Would it help if board members came? Do you think you need extra people just to show support?
It is a public meeting, and right now the presenter is myself and Jeremy and Brent, but the board certainly can be there. I did reach out to Bridget today, and there is limited room, but you can participate through the go-to meeting or be there in person. So I did ask Shannon, since he sits on the buildings committee, grounds committee, if anybody else care, or someone who sits on that meeting, if you wanted to come, I think that's appropriate. It is a public meeting, so if you want to come.
Just to know if having more support there would help our case.
All the support we can get will be helpful.
And then whatever is decided at that point, are we going to need to meet after that, or on a regular meeting, or just that's the only decision?
So the meeting Wednesday night is planning commission meeting, and then the planning commission is a subcommittee underneath the school, or underneath the city council, just as the buildings and grounds one is. So they'll bring that suggestion forward to the city council meeting, which I believe is the following Monday, and then the city council meeting will take that recommendation, and then they'll make their decision based on both that recommendation and then their own thoughts as board members.
Okay. Yeah, so basically the process is they have a hearing first and then decisions.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can you just send out those dates and times?
Yeah. Okay, moving on to item B, the one-to-one initiative update.
Okay, so since our last meeting, Jennifer had sent me some really good questions for me and Brian to research, and so we have been doing that. And I'll have Brian and Jennifer jump in at any time here, but I just wanted to start off by saying that we have reviewed a number of things since the last meeting. Most importantly, our infrastructure needs. and making sure that what we do with our infrastructure is what's best for our students, meaning we don't want to buy 2019 equipment for 2021 implementation. So making sure that we are smart in our purchases for our infrastructure, which is control. And Brian and Jennifer have more technology knowledge than I do, but controllers and Wi-Fi, those types of things, those pieces that are needed to make sure that we put a up-to-date system in place for our students. So that's that piece. And there is some work to be done on our infrastructure as far as our wireless is concerned, and through some heat maps and those types of things that have shown we have some issues as coverage as far as our Wi-Fi is concerned. The second piece that we looked in is into the multiple options of devices, and you can see the examples on our board book tonight where we put up our current one-to-one with MacBook Airs and iPads against accelerating, which you've seen before, but then also up against cloud streams.
Well, HP Stream is the model, but they're Windows Cloud Books. They're Microsoft's equivalent to a Google Chromebook. So they're similar in size, spec, cost. Differences is they're running Windows instead of Chrome OS. We live in the Office 365 world, so for us, Chromebooks don't have really any value. That's why we invested in Cloud Books. So that's the one of the two. That's what the two alternatives work on. I can talk about that if you want real quick. So before, when we met last time, the two options we were really talking about were our current technology plan and what we called the accelerated one, where we did MacBook Airs this year, and we discussed the implications of that. So the two alternatives that we actually put to paper this time, alternative 1 and alternative 2, utilize the Windows Cloud Books as a stopgap instead of going straight to MacBook Airs. So alternative 1, we would use Cloud Books this year, and there's some additional cost to that. And then it would be Cloud Books for 4 years on the 4-year cycle, because our plan with the laptops is a 4-year cycle. So we'd use those Cloud Books for 4 years, and then when the cycle starts over again, we would then invest in MacBook Airs for the students. So of the two alternatives, that's the more cost feasible one. We still run a deficit this fiscal year, but since we're not paying the lease on a MacBook Airs for the students for the next 3 years, obviously we have money left over to build up a fund balance. Logistically, the problem there is you're going to have staff with MacBook Airs in their classroom, and you're going to have students with Windows laptops in their classroom, and from an educational management standpoint, that's very suboptimal for the staff. It's not really a road we want to go down. There are some tools like Apple Classroom Manager that we want to leverage for the staff to help monitor their students in the classroom, and unless they're utilizing an iPad or a MacBook Air, we can't allow the teachers to leverage that with the students. The other option, alternative 2, uses Windows Cloud Books again as a stopgap for 1 year. So we would buy those Cloud Books for this.
What page is the one that you're
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at my spreadsheets.
Well, they don't say alternative 1 or 2.
No, 105
I'm sorry, they
is
should.
the page that has the MacBook Airs for 1 year, and 106 is, or sorry, the Cloud Books for 1 year.
They do
106
say
is the
alternative
Cloud
1
Books
and
for 4.
alternative 2.
Do that?
Yeah, and all caps at the end. So number 6, discussion items B. You scroll down, 1-to-1 LTV options K-5 iPads, alternative 1 PDF, alternative 2, the last 2 items on the
On
bottom.
the document, it doesn't, though, does it? I don't.
No, not on the
Must be on the
document,
quick
it just says it on the
And then if
title.
I look in the bookmarks, you can't see the whole title. So anyway.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So
105 is Cloud Books for first year,
And then 106.
106 is Cloud Books for 4 years.
okay, so
Okay.
sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know it didn't say that. I apologize. So that's alternative. Alternative 2 is to utilize Cloud Books only for this school year. So we would get 1 year of use out of them, and then next year in fiscal year 22, we would buy the MacBook Airs as our current schedule details. So we would basically continue to do the technology plan we're on now, on top of investing in everything we need, plus those Cloud Books for this 1 year to get them. problem is we don't build that initial fund balance this year to help kind of get that snowball to absorb the costs. And as you can see, we unfortunately run a pretty significant deficit. Not as big as a full-on MacBook Air deployment this year, obviously, because we're spending less money, but we still run that deficit. And then again, we still run into the issue of teachers using MacBook Air, students have the Windows devices, and there's that lack of synergy we're looking for being on a single platform. So those are kind of the two alternatives that we came up with that are different than our current plan versus buying MacBook Airs this year. Again, I'm going to say our current plan I think is the most optimal one for what we're trying to do, especially with a platform change. But Jen and I have talked and met and discussed that, so she's...
So I just want to make sure that I understand that.
Yes.
I mean, the real issue is the infrastructure for wireless.
That's one of them, yes.
I mean, that's the main issue. Like if we absolutely wanted to make this happen, we could get devices, it could cost money, and we're seeing that in front of us. But regardless, the infrastructure at the level that we should have in place, we would not be able to do until school year 2021. Fall of 21.
Ideally, yeah. So, right, correct.
What do you mean ideally?
Well, okay, so we have...
So 2021, we should be good.
Yes, because the plan as the schedule is laid out right now, we're finalizing and updating our wireless or wired infrastructure, the physical cables in the wall. We're finishing up those updates this year because we're upgrading equipment from the construction project 10 years ago when we had a chance to refresh. And once that's up to date, we can then expand our Wi-Fi coverage to handle the additional load from the additional devices. We have, generally speaking, very good coverage in terms of I can go stand in the corner and the Wi-Fi is not going to cut out on me, but I can't put 30 people in that same spot. Typically right now in schools, what they're doing for one-to-one to maintain performance, because you have so many kids hitting the Wi-Fi at the same time, is approximately one. I say approximately because sometimes they'll varies, but one access point per a typical classroom. You have a typical classroom of 25 to 35 kids. There's one access point hung in the room with the intention or hope that all the devices sitting in that room connect to that access point. You just go down the hallway, ding, 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 ding. Places where you might be able to get away with one every other room is if you have some small special purpose rooms, maybe special ed or other ones where you have smaller groups, maybe of 10 to 20, you can get away with something less than that. Right now, the way our system is designed, we're about every other room. So we'd be looking at about 60 kids to an access point. And, you know, if we're anticipating that these are getting used every day, all day for a variety of different multimedia tools, online learning, you know, we're using Amplify as a prime example of that in our science rooms. We just need to increase the throughput and the capacity of it. And that's one of the big things that this will allow us to do.
So to recap,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be having this decision if we weren't in this COVID mess. And the community is going to want to know if we got to go online learning, that we've done everything we possibly could to get us to an equal playing field. Because if we're at home and our kids are not in school, and this goes on throughout the whole fall and into the winter, there's going to be frustration, and there's going to be disappointment, and it's going to be hard. And again, it's not anybody's fault, but that's why we're having this conversation. And we don't want to have to go back and say, we should have pushed harder to do whatever we could have done to try to make sure that we can do this, you know, sooner if that's possible. So I just want to make sure that we're explaining to the community correctly. As people ask us, did you do everything you could do to get us there? Because, you know, again, times are strange, and it's going to be a challenge if that's what we have to do. Hopefully that isn't the case. So, you know, again, I don't, you know, obviously Jennifer has a better understanding. I mean, obviously you do. I just want to make sure that we don't have someone come back at us and really drive some questions to us about why we didn't keep pushing. And it sounds like we've done that. And, you know, then I would just say the reason we wanted to push in the last meeting is because we don't want to not have a start in 2021. It would be a disaster if we've done all this and we talked about this and then we don't get the things done that we have to get done to make that happen. So again, pushing gives me a little bit of security that we're going to make sure it happens in 2021. I get a little bit nervous when we put it on the back burner. And again, that's not fair because I know there's a lot of things that you're doing. And then all of a sudden it gets there and Apple or the infrastructure people or the construction people, if we push this to them and we have to get through the COVID and online learning, we better well make sure that we are ready to go and, hopefully maybe even sooner in the sense that, again, depending on how this year goes. Again, that's all I have to say on it, but.
I guess my question would be, will we have all of the devices on hand with however much time we need so that day one of school year 2021 in September, the students have their devices? Like, I feel like we should be able to
That's the plan. That's the plan. The plan would be is day one of school, basically a year from now.
Right.
We would have all the devices here because we would be handing out laptops to the kids here, well, not here in July, but in August in some sort of back to school workshop. And then K-5, the iPads intend to live in the classroom, and so they should be in the classroom by then. That's the intent. Now, working with principals and teachers at those K-5 grade levels, if they would prefer to introduce them in a slightly different way over the course of the first month of school, I mean, that's their academic decision, but as far as I'm concerned, in terms of procurement and getting into the system and all that stuff, my intent and plan is to have them here, ready to go for the first day of school next year. That's what the plan is. I mean, we'll be ordering this stuff sometime in the spring to ensure it's here on time.
I guess for me, to Shannon's point, I just don't want to be sitting here or wherever we're sitting over the course of next year, having the conversation of, well, now we're going to have to back it up because of this, or now we're going to have to back it up because of this, or now we're going to have to back it up because of this. I really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can for it to be implemented.
I do too, and that's why that's why Beth and I for sure really hammered this plan out and really looked at the numbers and stared at spreadsheets for a long time to make sure, yep, we can make this work.
And to me, I guess it makes me feel better to try and explain it to anybody out in the community that it's not about, for me, it's not about whether or not we could have got devices or whether or not we could have gotten everybody trained and up to speed on it. To me, it's really about the wireless stuff. Because I feel like we could get what we need before September of 2021. We could make it happen if everything else was aligned.
And I can speak to that a little bit. And the discussion that I had with Brian, we're sort of at an interesting place with technology and wireless because sort of like the next generation of wireless was just released this year. If we take, and that's what we should do. That's what we should be installing is what the next generation is. So we're future-proofing ourselves and not retroactively putting in old stuff that just becomes harder to manage, harder to support going forward. And so if we put in the new generation, that causes issues. If you think of it like your TV, like you can get 4K, but if you don't have a 4K TV, sort of what's the use? So if you get the new generation wireless, then you gotta upgrade other parts of your infrastructure so it can actually utilize that technology. And so knowing that moving to next generation actually, although it solves a lot of problems, it creates a subset of problems that are quite expensive that we will need to resolve and are reasonable, like updating the controller.
That's one of the big ones, yeah.
That's one of the big ones, fairly expensive to do that. So I don't know that we're necessarily behind the 8 ball, it's just technology is advanced so quickly that what we put in the construction project in 2010 is now nearing obsolescence. And what we need to put in is so far beyond the capabilities of what we have that we need to gradually bring the rest of our infrastructure along with us on the journey to moving forward and having really great wireless coverage and throughput throughout the buildings. So that was one big point that I learned in my time that I spent with Brian about not knowing how the wireless was set up, where the gaps were, what are we really utilizing. Once I learned that, made a lot more sense to me.
So ignorant question, but is this technology proven and used in the schools and that we don't have to worry about?
And that would be one of the one of the benefits of the way our plan actually ended up laying out, is it gives it that first year to let the early adopters work out the bugs.
Well, except that we're not, from what you just said, we don't have the infrastructure to
Correct.
to utilize this.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just talking about whatever Jennifer was talking
Right.
about. I want to hear from you that, because you're in that world right now. I don't want, it's great. It's great to be on the cutting edge, but
Yep.
is this reasonable and responsible for us to want to be there when, I mean, there's always kinks and stuff. And
Yeah.
is it a proven technology, and is it reasonable for a school to be as concerned about it? And again, I'm ignorant here. I don't know. Do we know anything about this technology and the snags that might come up?
Sure, I'd say it wouldn't be bleeding edge at this point. I interact with a number of businesses that are using this type of technology and it's working well. It's more cutting edge, I would say. It's kind of the latest and greatest that just came out, and I think maybe what you were gonna say, Brian, was if we let this lag a little bit, if we lag behind just a little bit, which is actually a responsible thing to do, then we kind of let everybody else play the dumb tax, if you will, pay that, where there might be bugs in it or fixes or things that work themselves out, and then we're just in a better place to move forward, I think, with any anticipated or unanticipated problems potentially being resolved.
Correct.
Not all, but some.
Right. I mean,
It's like buying a brand new model of a brand new vehicle, and maybe you're not the first one rolling it out of the lot, but I would say we're probably buying the second year model.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic, so it's Wi-Fi 6, it's the next standard that's come out. You might have seen some of the really more expensive home ones that say Wi-Fi 6 and has 800 antennas coming out of it. But that's the new standard, and so this is what everybody's going to be buying: education, business, what have you, moving forward. And it just happens to be when we buy them, it'll be about a year after they've kind of officially come out to the market to buy, which for that kind of technology isn't a bad idea, because like Jen was saying, that slight latency between part numbers available to buy day one and when you actually buy it, you don't pay that early adopter tax. Okay, we bought it, and yeah, when they were developing it, they didn't run into this issue, but now we ran into this issue in production, and now you're living with it. You kind of get to sidestep that a little bit and learn from some other people's mistakes, but it's not so old that you can see on the horizon, maybe I need to wait for Wi-Fi 7.
So to be really super clear, the technology is available.
Yep.
We do not have the infrastructure at this point to support the technology.
Not quite yet, but we will be there when we
Because
get
again, these are questions that we're going to be asked, and people are going to say, well, you can get it right now, you guys could have done it, yada, yada. Yes, we could have, but we could not support it and use it in the proper way based on our heat map and based on our infrastructure with where, 60 kids using one modem, and I'm using wrong terminology maybe, but basically, you were saying we need to get to where we have one set point for each classroom to use this technology efficiently.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, I would hope that everybody on the board communicates that to our people out there, because people, if we try to say, well, the new technology wasn't quite there yet, somebody will say, well, yeah, it is, you could have done it. So it is important that we communicate that correctly. And then, on to the teacher piece of this. We heard a lot about the teachers not wanting, I shouldn't say that, not feeling comfortable being able to get us ready because they're just going to be bringing this on. I would just hope that we are crystal clear with that group that they are training themselves to make sure that they are 100% prepared to handle how they're going to implement whatever it is they're doing within their departments to get it out there to the kids. And we're not sitting here next summer talking about how, this department didn't get this software and this, and there's some struggles. I mean, we shouldn't have those struggles. They should be able to work it out. If they use 30 kids as guinea pigs to try to figure out how this is going to implement, we got to do all those things. We have a whole year. And if we're online learning, they got 3 extra hours in their day, potentially, to work on some of these things. So I think it's important that we send those messages, and that's, not on your plate. That would be on, making sure that our principals and our building administrators know that we can't just let this sit there until next spring and you know, we're just kind of working through our snags. No, we need to be ready. And that's all I would ask. And if that's what I'm hearing, you know, I'm gonna defer to all of you that know way more about it. But it's gonna be, we're gonna have to communicate it right, because could be November and people are really sad and things aren't going very well and it's tough at home, and that's just gonna be part of life that we couldn't foresee happening. But we better be convicted in the fact that we made this decision to put it off a year, and it's because it's gonna even be better, is what I'm hearing Jen say, and it's what I'm hearing Brian say, and I'm hearing you say. We will roll it up, done deal. We will be ready, period.
I want to speak just really briefly too to the incongruency of operating systems. That is really important. Brian shared with us about that we do have other options. We can buy less expensive devices. Would they function? Sure. Would they deliver an optimal experience for teachers and students? No. Think of it as folks that are iPhone users versus Android users. Like, those don't interchange very nicely. If you're an iPhone user, you're gonna have a hard time just picking up an Android and just intuitively knowing how to use it, and vice versa, right? So if you think of a teacher having a Mac, using the Mac operating system, and then having to transition to a student using a different type of operating system, it's that same mental transition that's not intuitive, not quick, and would just, I think, introduce more challenges. I think it would actually cause more problems than it would fix. In addition to, although the devices are cheaper, after, what is the return on investment there? Like, almost nothing after about 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, those Windows Chromebooks have little to no residual value. The MacBook Airs right now, obviously we're looking 4 years out, so these are projected numbers, although the company we're working with on this, Diamond Assets, is pretty good at what they do. They're projecting around $300 a return per device. So if you have a device in what they consider, grade A condition, good condition, we potentially will get $300 per device back when we turn those in at the end. And so that's where the total cost of ownership for the Macs over the life of them, that playing field gets leveled a little bit, because now if you just strictly device cost, the Macs right now we're buying in the 10-pack for $779 a piece, which actually for a laptop isn't bad. That's actually not bad. And if we can get $250, $300 a machine back when we turn that around, now that cost is, more in that $500-ish range, $500, $600. I mean, it's significantly less. And now you're looking and go, oh gosh, that's, for a Mac, that's not bad. So, and honestly, it's not that much more than those cloud books. So, like I said, we have a good plan.
So I guess I just have a question. I think I brought this up at the last board meeting. If we end up with distance learning in the fall, I know that we were able to provide devices for families that needed them in the spring. Have we surveyed, or is there a plan to survey parents to find out if that need has changed? Because I feel like there may be families who said for 2.5 months, we can make do with what we have at home and we'll get through it. They may not have that same feeling if they're going into the new school year distance learning with really no idea of when the distance learning is going to end. So with the idea that this might be the entire school year and I can't make my devices at home work. So I'm just concerned that we might have a higher need than we did in the spring, and are we prepared for making sure that we've got enough devices to meet that need? And do we even know? I mean, have we surveyed? Have we gathered that information? Because we've had all summer to do it.
The answer to that question is no, we have not surveyed yet. That is on our agenda tomorrow in our emergency planning team to discuss when that survey is going to go out and what will be the questions we're asking. So
Okay.
Technology would definitely be part of that. We'll be asking them, very similar to what we asked the staff, questions about, how would they feel, what would make them feel comfortable coming back to school, what kind of plans can we put in place. But as far as technology is concerned, we'll ask those questions.
So that is on our radar to
That's
ask.
on our-
And I can say from just an inventory standpoint, we handed out, I think we were close to 300-ish laptops. I'd have to go back and look this past spring, and we did have more available.
How many more?
Oh, yeah. How many more? Oh, sorry, plenty more. Yeah, how many more? At least over 100 more. just off the top of my head that I can think of, because we had 2 more classroom sets, plus we're gonna get about 40 staff machines that we won't have to hand out because we're buying, 200 staff laptops. So we have, I feel, enough based on the responses we got last spring. But you make a valid point, if we're talking, that was 2.5 months versus going into a new school year, maybe indefinite. So, but we'll learn more through the survey that we're gonna do, and we'll make it work.
So if there's if we learn, just hypothetically, 1,000 people would want a device, how would we handle that gap?
I'm guessing families, number one, you'd have the one family, one device, there might be 3 or 4 kids. It's not ideal, but.
I'll be, to be 100% transparent with you, I don't know. I will, well, I'd have to, and I don't think that's an unfair answer, just based on the extremity of it. But I'd have to sit down and go like, okay, let's go back and take an exact inventory. How many devices do I have on hand? And, let's say you were saying 1,000 devices. Does that mean I have 1,000 kids who need a device? Where, kind of like you were saying, you were saying that maybe we have, if you've got 2 kids at home, you get 1 device. Is that going to be enough? Part of that too will be based on what our content requirements were. We found this past spring, generally speaking, 1 device to 2 kids was an efficient use of time on a device. If our content requirements for our curriculum is more rigorous than that, where they need more time on a device, we may find that's not enough, and that'll change our needs. But, if you're telling me, come this fall, based on survey results and the expectations of the curriculum, we need 1,000 devices, we'll have to sit down and go, all right, within the scope of budget that we have and the money we have available, how do we make it work? And maybe we need to buy that stopgap we talked about of something to get us there. But
So when you survey parents to gather some of that information, will you already know, before you do that survey, will you know whether or not 2 kids could efficiently share a device? Do you know what I'm saying?
no, I see what you're
Because I would answer differently as a parent if I knew that
understand.
all of my
Yep.
kids needed something.
Yep, and I understand your question.
Share.
We're all staring at each other going, what are we going to do? Because, unfortunately, the states wait until the absolute last minute to share what we need to know. What is it, next week, Wednesday, hopefully, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to learn more, hopefully something we can act on. I don't know if we want to wait that long for our survey. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. But you're right, based on what the expectations are for the distance learning, if we are distance learning, we'll obviously change their at-home needs.
I just wonder if it's worth postponing the survey a week until you maybe have those answers for parents and answer the questions more realistically.
Right.
So with this one-to-one initiative, do we need to just have consensus on what we're going forward, or a motion, or just?
It's a discussion item.
Yeah,
I don't think we can take
Yeah,
action.
just put in
Just a discussion.
Yeah, it's just continued discussion.
Okay.
And there'll be continued updates, so you know where we are as we go
Okay.
along.
Yeah, as we have updates, we'll certainly provide them to you to keep you in the loop about what we're doing.
Can we set up like regular updates, even if it's that there is no, or there's been no progress or whatever, like every,
Is it okay if it's a written update, or would you want me to come in and say there's no update?
well, no, there's no update, I don't think you have to physically
Right.
be here. But I just feel like we should have some sort of regular schedule so that we don't end up, the board not knowing where we're at and it's a crucial thing and we're like, what do you mean?
Well, what I can try to remember to do is give a written update on it. Even like you said, if there is no update, I can just say no update.
Nothing has changed.
And then, if it's just something to keep you abreast on, I can put it in a written form. If it's something more extreme happens, like Apple goes out of business and we have to change our plan, then I can come sit down in front of you and talk about it. Or if you request my presence, I'm certainly welcome to come as well. But if that's okay with everyone here.
Yeah, I mean, even if we just penciled out, or you could, not us, but just pencil out some milestones, like,
Yeah.
I think they're pretty obvious what they are, and then
Right, when they show up. Yeah.
anticipated dates of when those milestones would happen, and if you back out the whole plan a year, then get you there in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah. We can work on something.
Two science question, Nate, as far as talking about with teachers, what their expectations are going to be, and having had 3 kids go through this last year, they all had very different ways to go about this online learning. To Sonny's question, it's going to be really having a good handle on what those teachers are going to potentially do, how they're going to use their online devices. Some of the kids were, on Zoom meetings. Some of them, it was just a text. I mean, I think my kid finished the year on a cell phone, which seems crazy that he could do it. I can't even imagine that, but that's what kids did. So I guess the conversations with your staff on, hey, if we find out next week this is where we're going, we need to have a plan so we know how much you're going to be using something that's going to be very critical to the students, especially at the higher levels, especially at the high school level where some of these classes are going to be dependent on it. I think it's going to help to be able to make a decision on, can a family handle 1 device or 2 devices, how important it is for a kid that's in the senior college courses that they need to have adequate equipment at home. It's going to help parents. And it's just the way life is, and it might mean teachers are going to have to reinvent their curriculum a little bit. Have you guys had any of those discussions, or?
Coming off, I think it was our parent survey or teacher survey, that was one thing that came up, was the platform being used, a consistent platform. We talked about going from Teams to Zoom. Teams got a few more things they've added since we began our distance learning. But I have a kid that also likes to do it on the phone as well, which they can access Teams on the phone.
Yeah, no, I'm just, knowing what the teachers are going to have.
What they need to access, like you said, it needs to be, well, all high school, even middle school, so much classes. They need what they need to access that, making sure we have it all on the same platform, makes it easy for them to know how to access it and what they need.
Because some teachers, they kicked out their lessons and stuff, but I don't know that our kids even needed a device to, they just needed to submit what they needed to do, but there wasn't any interaction with that teacher as much. So again, I think the more that we know how those teachers are going to do it, the better it might be to be able to relay to parents what is going to be expected. It's a huge ask. I mean, it's almost seems impossible.
I'll just comment on the survey from both the students and the parents' perspective. And what we talked about in our emergency planning team with teachers there is that our kids and our parents want to see the interaction between them and their teachers. And I just read an article from Jack Berkmeyer, who is a middle school guru, is saying the exact same thing, that teachers need to be the one creating the videos and creating the lessons for their kids, because that's the person they connect with the most. And so that's the one thing we'll have to make sure that our staff knows that that's how we want them to reach our students.
So we've talked about the whole school.
Can I
year.
just, we're on this 1-in-1 initiative. Can we wrap that up and then move on to maybe like the fall planning update? Because I think this is sort of more fall planning update on the agenda.
Well,
do we want
that's
to?
fine. I don't know that it matters where we use the time.
Yeah.
If you feel like we need to.
Well, we
Move on
can,
into-
I don't know if we want to just tie it in together, because I feel like we're sort of moving into that. I just want to,
I think when we get to fall planning, then we won't have much to say.
okay.
If we just continue the
That's
conversation.
fine. So I just was,
So the school is,
Schoology.
however you say that.
Schoology.
Is that on the same timeline as the one-to-one stuff, or is that happening sooner?
So that we have purchased now, and I'm working with, we have I don't know if he's truly just dedicated to us, but we have an account guy setup guy who's helping me get it integrated with Skyward and all of our systems for the staff to use. And in normal world, the intent was this year would have been the year that we start really kind of showing the teachers how to use it. Like, okay, let's make a lesson in here. Like, you don't have to live in it, but let's make a lesson and kind of ease them into it. So by next fall, when we hand out devices to kids, it's not a new thing that they're learning on top of everything else. Obviously, COVID's changed that a little bit. We're still doing it. I'm still working on rolling it out. We're still going to make it available to staff in the fall. I know some staff have used it before if they've come in from another district, so they're going to be more familiar with it and be able to hit the ground running. But part of our, PD plan this year, getting ready, staff ready for one-to-one, was to educate them on how to use Schoology. So it's going to be available for them in the fall. If we're distance learning in the fall and the teacher's like, yeah, I know how to use it, just let me go. Have fun. But it's gonna be available.
Because if I remember correctly, a lot of the concern and the issues and the angst that parents and students had was all of the different platforms. And so now we might have people using Teams, Zoom, or Schoology, or
Well, and, you know, and it may be the other option then is if we want to try to reduce that is I don't want to say don't let teachers use Schoology, because that's not what I mean by that, but when we're delivering content and we're actually, you know, doing day-to-day work with students, we try to minimize the different options, and we only live in, like, you know, Teams and, you know, Schoology and Flip, or Teams and Zoom and like one other thing, you know, to try to minimize what you're talking about, but still keep them working on Schoology in the background, because this year they need to spend time in Schoology, even if they're not doing it in, you know, production, if you will, just doing it in a test environment to be like, okay, I'm putting in an assignment, I'm grading an assignment, I'm putting in quizzes, I'm getting content in there, because the long-term intent with this as an LMS is that's going to be the primary home for a teacher to put worksheets and tests and content for the kids to go access in the classroom. And what I don't want to see happen is this kind of become our Moodle 2.0, and we've had Moodle as an LMS for a long time, but it really never got off the ground. It was here when I came here, so I don't know what implementation looked like, but I don't want this to be that. I want it to be heavily utilized by everybody as best we can. And so we can't let this first year of it go by because it's going to get forgotten. So I don't disagree with your point about the my wife yelled at me about that with our kids too. So I got both, you know, I get it at home too. But we definitely still need to make sure we're having the teachers spend time in it, again, even if it's not actively for a class they're teaching, so that they get comfortable with it so we can use it a year from now.
Yeah, it is crucial for success that we reel the teachers in at each building and make them understand that we have to help families, and we can't be all over the board, and they can't be renegated. Also, the COM dollars can be another place where this whole Schoology piece is something that, you know, again, the teachers are getting paid to do these extra assignments. Again, I would strongly suggest to them that a lot of them are spending their time, they're getting paid to get this thing figured out. And I would just hope that our teachers union and whoever's in charge of them would really strongly suggest that that's where they spend that time. It would make total sense. It needs to happen, because that answers your question right there. It gives them time built into their day to work on getting that platform ready to go. But back to Sunny's point, it is going to be important that each building supervisor, principal is very, very clear with their teachers. We cannot make this very difficult on families because we're all over the place. And one third grade teacher's doing this, and the other one's doing that. And one sixth grade teacher's doing this, and the other one's doing that. And one chemistry can't happen. So it's not going to be easy, but they're going to have to understand it, because that's what makes it very challenging for parents at home. And we have to find a way to make it easier if we're going to be at home learning. So.
Okay.
So to Jason's point, I think we talked through the one-to-one and built in the fall planning, so we could probably skip letter E when we get to it.
So,
No, I think there's other.
I mean,
yeah.
Do you want me to ask a
Sure,
follow-up question?
sure,
now?
yeah,
so
absolutely.
should we just tie in the fall planning to
Yeah.
this? Since we're sort of, let's just do that.
Okay, so I think it's hard a little bit to have like a really robust conversation around fall planning, because we don't know what the plan is from the state yet, but I'm just curious, there's some things that we do know what we have, how we're readying ourselves from like a facility standpoint, like building standpoint. We're talking a lot about the technology pieces. There's going to be some mental health stuff, some catching up. There's just a lot of things that we can be thinking about right now, and I'm curious how we're preparing ourselves.
Yeah, good question here, thank you. So we have employed IEA, which is our current company that helps us with our indoor air quality and all those other issues. And a subset of our EPT team is meeting with Amanda.
It's Amanda. I can't think of her last name. It's Amanda.
Amanda on a weekly basis, and what we do is then we walk through her with her, and then that goes into our emergency planning team. So last week we talked a lot about the cleaning issues, so we have a lot of that. From that, we ordered our circles, our 6 foot, our social distancing circles. Today we talked about busing. So all of those things are progressing. And when it's all done with, we'll have a log level, a document that will say, this is how we're going to address all of these items.
So, okay, so just so I understand, so we are working on the 3 different options that we're required to have in place.
Yep,
And
we're working on
we
it.
have to have those done by the 27th.
We do not have to have those done by the 27th. We have to have them done, I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but our plan, our timeline is to have them done by August 7th.
So what's the 27th date?
That's when the governor is going to make or the Department of Health, Education, governor is going to make their announcement on how we're going to start the school.
I thought we also had to have our plans.
We do not.
Are we having supply chain issues with purchasing new supplies that we need?
We have a adequate inventory right now for what I'm anticipating the first month of full back to school. I started doing some of the calculations today just based on some assumptions of how we would, assumptions on how we would typically clean. And we're set for the first month. I have to meet with Beth in the coming day about what that looks like financially, because it's large.
So I've seen a lot on social media of people trying to get an idea from teachers or school districts on what they could donate to help, whether that be like Clorox wipes or hand sanitizer, things that, what are teachers looking for? Or if we were going to be in the classroom, what is it that teachers would want people to donate if they were going to donate?
So we would need to look at our class lists and what have we asked our elementary kids in the past, as far as that's concerned.
Well, right, so I think about the class list, I always ask for Clorox wipes, right, or disinfectant wipes?
This year it'll be.
Right, but some of that stuff, the average person isn't gonna be able to get in a store because they're not in stores.
So yeah, it could be monetary, it could be money because you might have access to these wipes and these things, so, maybe it's a donation because, they can't just bring in a box of whatever.
Yeah, if I could, I love the idea of that, and I think it's a great concept. It's, when you do the math on however the desks and such are wiped, it's daunting at the actual quantity. I think each of my children in elementary school bring 2 of the little tubs of wipes, and that would, it barely touches the need. If, per se, every kid wipes on their desk after each of their class, or somebody comes in and does it for them, or however that works. Like in what would be called 8th grade, each kid moves, is it 6 times, am I following that right? So 6 kids, 25, 28 kids in a class, I mean, it's just.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I think if parents are willing to donate something,
Yeah.
it would be nice if we could tell them what are the things that
Yeah.
would be most efficient or effective to
And I'm saying
donate.
is if it's money, then we need to get that communicated, that we need to ask for that.
And right now, there's a big concern for parents because what does the supply list look like? And we can't really tell them because we don't know that yet.
Right.
The ops been getting calls, where's the supply list? Well, if we come back, it'll be this full time, so they are asking.
Yeah.
The parents are asking right now, what are we supposed to get? Because if they wait till the last minute, it'll be gone.
Right.
So they're asking what
Yep.
we should get.
Yep.
And we've had
I mean, I guess you could probably say, pick up some disinfectant wipes. If you don't bring them to school, I'm sure you could use them at home.
Yeah, Stephanie has given us a great resource in that in gathering wipes. There's also a resource training solution with the, what's the term, cooperative?
That cooperative purchasing agreement.
So then we can use our tax exempt status, of course, and then buying at a discount. We've recently discovered that the county, I think it's the emergency planning team, is also putting together a cooperative first aid to help gain assets such as gloves, face masks, wipes, stuff like that. So there's other people that are putting things together as well to try to get some purchasing volume as well as locking in better pricings.
Do we have to do any, as you look at this with our consultant, are there any major like HVAC upgrades or filtering systems that we have to?
No, it's typically most of the stuff I see, there's the option of increasing circulation to bring more fresh air in. Some people are doing different things, but it's a much greater, broader picture if you change like the filtration and stuff like that. As you can imagine, it can wreck equipment and stuff like that. So it's a really large discussion. We're having it with other people, directors and stuff like that in my position. We're having the discussions, and nobody's really taken that route to speak of at this point.
So then, I'm just curious about some of the other issues that I probably can't even identify, but one of them I think about is, there's a new achievement gap, and there's there's probably some mental health stuff and all of that. Are we identifying some of our, risks coming into the fall and working at now to develop strategies to mitigate those risks?
So part of our IEA plan is to actually identify all mental health workers in our district and then posting those resources, those numbers, so when parents are having issues, who can they call and how do they get a hold of them? Partnering up with True Balance to make sure that they're on board is helping us as well as state. So mental health, I'm feeling pretty good about being ready for the fall, at least being able to communicate where students and parents can get resources. Some of those other issues that you're thinking about, transportation is on the top of our list. We've had about 800 responses?
Yeah, it was a little over 800. 800
responses so far, 800 family responses, and about 285 said that they'd be willing to opt out. So then having to look at those routes and those types of things are definitely on our mind.
So I did have some people ask me about, or comment about the survey that they wondered if it would have been more, so when they were taking it, they felt like they weren't being necessarily, not honest, but like their child may need transportation just to school but not from school, or vice versa, but you didn't have the opportunity to answer that. It was either they needed transportation or they didn't need transportation. So I wonder, would it help us to know if it's only one way? Like, would that help us in planning transportation? And so is there a way that we can go back and gather that? Because
so if the parent reached out to me individually, which I got plenty of on the transportation, that's the answer. So if any time they have a question on something like that, just reach out to me and I'll answer them. And that's
no, I know, but you answering them isn't giving us as a district the information that there's 4 kids in that family that only need transportation in the morning.
Yeah.
And so if we would have broadened or could still broaden that survey, they say, okay, we know that for those of you that said you need transportation, do you need it both ways or do you need it just one way? Is it afternoon? Is it morning?
So the simple answer to that question is yes, we can add more drop-down questions when and if we do another survey and say, okay, here's the state said in person, or the state said hybrid, and now we're going to say, now we need your real final answer.
The next one, does it help us?
Right. That's kind of my point, is that does it help us to know?
Does it help us
I would think it would.
to shorten up bus routes if 100 kids only need a ride to school versus 17?
Assuming those 100 kids live in all different places.
Well, right, that's fine. I mean, it seems like a jigsaw puzzle that I don't even know, unless, like you said, they all are in the same spot, and you might get lucky and get rid of one bus. That's what I think.
Social distance on the bus to begin with. You can't put kids in every seat, so
Anyway, I think that's what
But
such
I don't even know if
aspects
it's about getting rid of one bus. I think our challenge is gonna be needing more buses because we can't have as many people on a bus at the same time. And so if you know that there's 100 less kids, whether they're all in the same area or spread out, you might not need to send 2 buses to one route. You know what I mean? I just.
Right, but if they're.
So, what happened when we did the transportation form is we actually cloned our entire routing system so that our bus companies can play in there with the responses that those parents got. So if the parent has something like, my kids are only riding to school, it's as easy as emailing the bus company. That's how quick it is. That's what we ask people to do who have different family situations.
But
as
they
well.
would have to know to do it. Like, I would not know that I should email somebody
Yeah, you could.
if I only needed transportation one way.
Okay. I think that's something that's really easily communicated now as well, to update and let them know, hey, if you've got a special situation, that here's the bus company emails, go ahead and shoot them an email. That's essentially what those transportation forms do, is create an email that goes to the bus company so that they can route you.
So my communication would be families, if there's a change or you need this or that, the email to the company is where we'll go.
Do both companies have the software now?
Correct, yes.
Any other fall planning update questions? Okay, thanks. And then now to item C, Community Education Program Update.
Yeah, so I just want to give a brief update on community ed. Just wanted to say a big thank you to all of those who are doing our current programs. We have a variety of programs and things going on right now. Swim lessons, online classes, defensive driving for our adults. That's being done in combination with the Metro School. We have camps, we have, I look out to me in our parking lot and I thought, are we open for school for like full business? And so, I mean, a big kudos to our community ed staff for being out there and giving our kids and our community the opportunity to be active in the summer. The second piece that I wanted to say, as far as the summer programming is also that's going on, that's more than just community ed, is also things like ACT testing. We had 140 students who took the test on Saturday. About 20-25% weren't Rocori kids, so we had people coming here. And I read an article in the Minneapolis Tribune today saying that schools in the metro had multiple issues. Some kids showed up and then only to find out that their testing center wasn't even open. And so I just wanted to say good job to the high school counseling staff and high school office for putting together a successful ACT test. And then today we started summer school. We have about 50 kids coming to our summer school at CSE, and on a rotating, so we have about 20-25 today that are coming on an alternative day. So we're practicing the hybrid right now at CSE for a targeted group of kids to help that achievement goal. So, you know, again, even in a tough time, our people are finding ways to help keep our kids active and educated. So I can't think of
As long as you're throwing it out there, we had, I don't know, 100 kids out there in a football camp, and again, kudos to teachers, coaches, you know, that have really followed the guidelines and did everything they had to do to get those kids out there. And it was a great day. It was a great day to see the kids feeling like they're doing something that is normal. And yeah, it was awesome. It really was. So thank you.
So with that positive update, there's also always things that we have to worry about, and one of the things we have to worry about is the financial piece. And I want you to focus on, when you look at that spreadsheet, I can't remember the page of that, Beth. What's the page on that? 107. That when you look at that budget comparison, that you really you focus on that there's two things that go on that went on here. One is, and it's been a sore spot forever, that early childhood is underfunded. It's underfunded. Our governor, Dayton, tried hard to get it funded correctly, and Governor Walz is doing the same thing. And we're working as districts to help that problem. And secondly, you know, I think, made a really good decision to make sure that our people were still on staff in the spring. And there was costs associated with that. And the fact that we simply could not collect revenues that we had normally collected weren't there. But we made a good decision to keep those people employed, helping their students as best they could, even in distance learning, to keep working, despite the fact that we knew we weren't going to get revenue for it. So you see the financial piece of it, but again, doing what's best for our students and our family and our community sometimes means that there's a cost to education, and you see the cost in front of you.
Can you walk me through a little bit the expenses for ECFE? It just seems a lot higher than I was expecting.
Do you mind if I ask Beth to help us with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so at the end of the year, the state allowed us to basically code school readiness and early childhood together versus separating them. So we just started coding, so all those costs that we didn't, or all those teacher and paraprofessional costs, instead of coding them to school readiness, we've just put them into early childhood instead. So they basically kind of are blanketed together this year instead of being completely separated.
So basically, the true cost of ECFE is not 246,000. It's just the coded.
No, it should have been based on the budget, it should have been around like 153. Just in everything in the spring over to ECFE. So that's why at the very bottom of the sheet, ECFE and school readiness, their budgets are combined down there. So you can see our expenditures are just slightly under budget for the year, and then of course those revenues are pretty far under budget with losing the fees from parents, and then we lost United Way grants as well in the spring.
And then the $53,000, was that included in our budget revision that we did?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that was the
So that was
budgeted
already
transfer.
accounted for. The unaccounted was the 62,000.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so for school readiness, we did budget to lose in that one about $10,000, but as I was looking at it, and my recommendation would be just to cover the loss completely versus letting that fund balance keep going lower and lower if you're gonna make a transfer anyway. This year, to help with COVID, I figure you might as well do the full amount versus partial. And this is estimated, of course, there's still journal entries that have to be done, but it's close.
Any other questions on community ed or for Stephanie? She's here too. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item D, the child care contract for 2021.
Yeah, so in the packet is the 2021 child care assistance. The date changes is the significant, as well as the other significant changes not being closed for the whole week around July 4th. Stephanie, do you remember what the average attendance was on around the 4th of July week?
I want to say around 50 to 60.
So 50 to 60 kids who wouldn't have been serviced in previous years got to be serviced this year because we decided to make the keep open. I don't know how many, did the seniors come very often? I wasn't over there.
Senior center's closed through Labor Day for sure.
Oh, that's right, they're closed because of COVID. That's right, I'm sorry.
So the schedule, so the adjustment that we made to our district buildings being open was a positive.
Yes.
So then this will come back for action.
Let's come back for action next time.
Okay. Any other questions on that contract? Okay. Item E, we already discussed. Item F, strategic plan update.
Yep, so everybody, just so everybody knows that Bruce Miles, our strategic plan consultant, is on board now. with the dates that provided, which would be August 19th is with the administrative team, and we'll do that via Zoom. And then August 26th will be with our staff, and we'll be sending out those Zoom links for their staff on the 26th of August. And then that night will be the community. So we'll be sending out, we'll be advertising that will be out there as well. And just so you all know that Albany did the same thing and had some good results with Bruce doing a Zoom meeting, getting in their different breakout rooms and those types of things. And then on September 14th in the work session, he'll be here live with you.
September 14th.
That's that first board meeting, I think, is that Monday in September.
So I'm just looking at what you have sent, so it's not going to be broken into 3 different sessions for the board?
No, it's just one 90-minute session. And I will recommend that we do that in a work session, in the work session part of the meeting.
Any other questions on the strategic plan update? Okay, moving on to action items. Item A, resolution for calling general election. Is there someone that would
Make a motion that we call the resolution for the general election.
motion by Lynn,
Second.
second by Kara. All those in favor, roll call vote. Jennifer?
Aye.
Shannon?
Aye.
Aye.
And aye.
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 Sunny, aye. Motion passes, resolution passes. Identified official with authority. Recommendation to approve Superintendent Brad Kelton as the identified official authority, so we need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to authorize Brad as the identified official with authority. And then Beth as the person to add and remove names only. Okay.
Motion by Sunny,
Second.
second by Kara. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item C, long-term facilities maintenance plan.
So every year, MDE requires us to approve the long-term facilities maintenance plan. So there is a revenue projection that we approve, and then an expenditure projection, and then Brad also gets to sign the statement of assurances that says we're going to follow any restrictions that we need to for this. So page 117 and 118 are the revenues, and I apologize, it's really tiny, but it's a 10-year sheet all year on Excel, so make it as big as you can to read it. But pages 120 and 121 are the summarized expenditures. I make it summarized by kind of by category, so mechanical systems versus plumbing, that kind of thing. And then page 122 and 123 is kind of the internal document that Brent and I work off of that has it a little more detailed. And I will say generally like the first 3 to 4 years out are pretty detailed, pretty much set in stone, with some of those longer term projects farther out being a little bit more like, yep, we know these are coming up, not exactly sure how much they're going to be, and there's always room in there too to kind of move projects around based on priority. And you know, there are always things that break down every year that we end up kind of having a contingency for it. So.
Any questions on the long-term facilities maintenance plan?
I do. For this fund, do we code any employees to the long-term facilities maintenance fund?
Yeah, so every, under professional services and salaries, if you're looking at the expenditure code, it's 382. Every year we budget about $50,000 that would kind of help cover some of our grounds and maintenance crew, some of their salary. That, I mean, $50,000 doesn't even cover one of them salary and benefits, but it is a chunk that kind of can help alleviate for general fund operations.
Okay, so that's still a lever that we utilize. And is there a limit to how much we can code in those salaries?
Nope, we could be, putting more of it there. The only thing is there are, I'm thinking about like, Terry, for example, who mostly does grounds, the mowing and those kind of items really wouldn't fall so well under this restriction. That would be more of a stretch. But I think about someone like Tom, who is in all the buildings and fixing stuff. I think coding all of his salary here is probably pretty reasonable.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item D, resolution to.
Hold on,
we need to approve that.
Oh, to approve, oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve the long-term facilities maintenance plan.
Motion by Sunny,
Second.
second by Kara to approve the long-term facilities maintenance plan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Long-term facility maintenance plan has been approved. Item D, resolution to accept a donation.
This is accepting the donation from the Blattner family for the fireworks at graduation. I recommend that we approve this, and we did check this can be just done by does not have to be roll call.
Brad, as long as you mention graduation, just for all the folks out there, went well.
Yeah, I'll have an update
Okay.
on that in my superintendent report.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the donation of fireworks?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Lynn,
Second.
second by Shannon.
Our name's shorter.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the donation was accepted. Let's see, then we're on to superintendent report.
A couple items to report on tonight. One, you see in there the open enrollment graph. So we're still in the middle of July, and so we're still on a trajectory going up. I'm hoping that we continue our history and finish getting those 40 students to make our budget for a number of students enrolled. So we'll keep watching that very closely. The second one I want to do is, as Shannon alluded to, is a graduation update. The process to get to an overwhelmingly successful graduation was a bit bumpy. I sincerely appreciate the input of our students, our parents, and you as a board on planning for and pulling off what I thought was an amazing ceremony. So thank you to everyone for your patience and your help in giving our 2020 graduates a send-off that they won't forget, I hope. As of 7/17, so as of Friday, I went out onto the YouTube, and the graduation ceremony itself had over 2,200 views. The St. Cloud Times ran a nice spreadsheet of pictures that was really kind of highlighted all of the steps that we did to make sure that we had a safe environment for our students. And then, of course, the video that Sun Productions did, a group of gentlemen, two guys from River of Life Church with their drones and their videos, was simply amazing. So I can't thank everyone enough for all of their hard work and patience as we went through planning for and pulling off graduation ceremony.
Yes, and as a parent of a senior, again, I would say thanks, and thanks to the community for working through it with us. Transparency was something that, as we moved over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, talked about really wanting to make sure we got there. And like Brad said, it wasn't easy. Good things are not always easy. So thank you for listening, which is not always easy either, and just finding a way. And I think it was as good as you could possibly expect. And the good Lord gave us a really great night to do it too. So we were rewarded with that. So thank you, Brad, and the rest of the staff. And again, it wasn't easy, I know that.
And then my last is the legislative update, and at 5:30 today, nothing really has been passed through the legislature, and so I don't have a lot. The focus was been on the bonding bill and the police reform, so we'll have to just wait and see if anything comes out of it for education. But as of 5:30, there wasn't a whole lot of news yet on what was being passed. The legislature did say that they are going to adjourn tonight at midnight, so we'll see what happens. That is all I have for my report.
Okay. Then we've got board committee and representative reports.
I report on Community Education Advisory, which did not meet since our last board meeting, as well as Meet and Confer, that did not meet since our last board meeting. And Technology Committee also did not meet, but I think I alluded to a one-on-one meeting that I had with Brian and shared what I learned from that meeting previously when we were talking about the one-to-one initiative.
Kara?
The committees in which I report also did not meet.
Okay. Sunny?
My committees did not meet.
No Minnesota State High School League though, just for all of you that, have kids in activities, they will probably follow and suit with the decision after, the decision next week. And I think August 4th is kind of what they've thrown out there as far as what they're going to try to do. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of what I'm hearing. And just again, so everybody knows, we started our weight room activities. We did not have any issues. We did, our kids social distance. They learned how to go through this process. I think it's 140 kids that have started to learn how to live through this new normal. And we started our football camp today, which is not normal because there's plenty of schools in our area and around the rest of the state that just are not trying to do it. So again, kudos to the people here that are getting our kids out there and really trying to find a way by relying on community members to help with some of the supplies that are needed, and really just putting in tons of time of communicating, documenting how we're going to transport kids to a scrimmage, how we're going to get through each practice, and really it takes a number of people, and it takes ultimate support from the top to allow us to let people that are willing to do that. If this week goes well, it will have an impact on the Minnesota High School League. I truly believe that, because we're going to show that you can do these things and have some activities as long as you're being as responsible as you can. So again, that would be my update. You should be proud of some of the people we have out there working to get our kids active. You really should.
Okay. Thanks. Lynn?
None of my committees met.
And for me, none of my committees met either. Okay. Let's see. And we've got budget comparison report for June.
If anyone has any questions, I'm here.
Questions? Okay. I think upcoming events and activities. Looks like there'll be a policy meeting coming up the first part of August. Otherwise, I think the plan is to try to continue to meet here through August for sure. For our school board meetings, we'll have to see where we go when school starts, as far as once we have a plan as far as what that's going to look like and space needs and such. So,
Is there any need for a board meeting after the decision comes out?
Question.
I talked to a couple superintendents who they're planning on having a work session or a meeting. I'm not opposed to, I know you all have work lives, I'm not opposed to just a quick meeting in the morning, after the decision, just to hear your thoughts. But we would have to post for it.
I think it's a good idea.
I would agree, it doesn't hurt to post a meeting. Just so
because
it's
we
out
won't be meeting until the 10th otherwise, and so that's 2 weeks from the decision from the state.
No, I
right?
think that's probably a good idea.
So does a 7 o'clock in the morning meeting work for you all?
What day are you talking?
I don't know that there's the urgency to have it like that day.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you.
I
don't
actually think it's better as a board that we have a little bit of time
To process.
to process.
Because you're anticipating, so you were thinking 7 o'clock in the morning at, like.
Yeah, but I don't know,
28.
I don't know when the actual decision's coming
Right,
out, so.
right.
Could we just, so if we assume that it was gonna be on the 27th, is the Wednesday the 29th?
29th.
Can we just have a work session on the 29th?
Mm-hmm.
And at night or in the morning?
I'm not available at night.
What about the Minnesota State High School? I mean, does it make sense to coordinate with what, you know, again, I might be wrong on August 4th, but, you know, if they're gonna wait until then, because that's gonna also have some impact on how we're going to, you know, to handle our activities.
But I feel like that we could address on the August 10th meeting.
Okay. Which is true, because they don't start technically till the 17th, so
Right.
there'll be a week, but that's gonna be as many questions as we get from people on other things. They're gonna have questions about that, and that's just the way life is. Because they're wondering if their kids have to start practice, are they, you know, are they not gonna have practice, can they go on a vacation or go to the, you know, they're just gonna have a million of those things, so.
So tentative work session the 29th at 6:30 PM, so we keep consistent?
No, well, Jen.
Jen can't make that.
Oh,
so
sorry,
let's-
I'm sorry,
let's-
Jennifer.
It's not an ideal night for me. 28th, can we just do the 28th? Because he said the 27th.
28th, right now, I'm
28th, I
supposed
can-
to be at the city
Okay.
hearing that, but
The
we can
evening
make
of
it
the
after
20
that.
The evening of the 27th? Or we could do.
27th, I can't make it.
We don't really have time to like
The
process.
You're not enough time to process, I think, if we do it the same day. Can anybody do it in the morning
I
early?
can do it in the morning, early.
Like I can't do Tuesday, but I could do Wednesday early in the morning,
That looks
the
better.
29th.
Wednesday morning.
What's wrong with Thursday then? Did we, Thursday?
We don't have to plan around me, I'm gone the 30th through the 4th, so, or 5th.
What about the morning of Tuesday? Is this a day? Tuesday morning?
Tuesday morning, the 28th?
Well,
Wouldn't you want to
when you
meet
say
after the
Wednesday-
emergency planning team? But not before, I'm thinking, we have a meeting at 9 AM that day, so would you want to meet?
When you say Wednesday morning, what time are you talking about?
I'm open
I'm
Wednesday.
wide open, anytime Wednesday.
7 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
I won't be here at 6 o'clock.
It does
I
get
just have to be in the office that day and I have to be there by 8:30.
So should we do 7?
7?
Do we do 7? And then you just leave
Yeah.
by 8 so you can get off work on time?
Just making sure that I don't have to work that morning.
Then you have to work every morning.
Yeah.
I was gonna-
I'm trying not to work
I
on
mean,
Wednesday.
you better have long johns that day, I mean, if that's what you're cutting out.
Actually, I don't know, I've got so many employees that are changing their schedules.
So July 29th, and then we'll call it a work session.
Okay.
7 AM. And the agenda will be discussion of the government recommendation to start the school year.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
If anybody is interested, I just got a notice that the city of St. Cloud passed the mask ordinance tonight.
They did? Yeah.